The Miller house had always been a kaleidoscope of contained emotions, but on that Christmas night, the silence was deafening. My name is Emily, I'm 15, and I watched my family distribute presents with surgical precision that deliberately excluded one person, me. The scent of cinnamon and pine mingled with the tense air in the room. My father, Robert, a marketing executive with eyes always focused on success, passed the wrapped packages meticulously. My mother, Sarah, a high school teacher, smiled mechanically at each distributed package. My older brother, Jason, received a new set of snowboarding gear. My younger sister, Lily, got a pink tablet that gleamed under the Christmas tree lights. And me, invisible. It wasn't the first time I felt like an outsider in this seemingly perfect family. Something had changed over the past 2 years. A distance that grew like a silent crack in a porcelain wall. My eyes met Grandma Helen's, sitting in the corner of the sofa. Unlike the others, she watched me with a gaze that carried a secret, something between compassion and an unrevealed promise. When the last present was distributed, an uncomfortable silence filled the room. Jason displayed his new equipment. Lily was lost in her tablet. My parents exchanged glances that seemed to encode invisible messages. That's when Grandma Helen stood up, with slow but determined movements. Her 78 years didn't diminish the authority emanating from each gesture. "Emily," her voice called, soft but firm, "I have something for you." In her trembling hand, a small package wrapped in old gold paper, clearly different from all the other presents that night. What could be inside that peculiar little package, and why was Grandma the only one who seemed to care? Grandma Helen's hand trembled slightly as she extended the small package. The gold paper was worn, with delicate creases that suggested a long journey. Her eyes, a mix of azure and wisdom, locked with mine, a silent communication that spoke volumes. "Open it," she whispered. The room fell into an expectant silence. My parents exchanged a quick, almost imperceptible glance, a micro-expression of tension that disappeared as quickly as it emerged. Jason was absorbed in adjusting his new snowboarding bindings, while Lily remained buried in her tablet's glowing screen. My fingers carefully unwrapped the package, revealing an old, leather-bound journal. The cover was faded, with intricate embossed letters that seemed to have been pressed decades ago. A name was barely visible: Margaret Elizabeth Miller, my great-grandmother's full name. "This belonged to your great-grandmother," Grandma Helen explained, her voice carrying a weight of unspoken stories. "She wanted you to have it when the time was right." I could feel the weight of family history in my hands. The journal felt alive, as if containing secrets waiting to be unraveled. My grandmother's intense gaze suggested this was more than just a simple Christmas gift. Robert, my father, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Sarah, my mother, suddenly became very interested in rearranging the Christmas decorations. Their reactions were telling. Something about this journal made them nervous. "Why me?" I asked, looking at Grandma Helen. "Why not Jason or Lily?" Before she could answer, my father interjected. "Emily, perhaps we should discuss this later." But Grandma Helen's steely gaze silenced him. "No, Robert, now is exactly the right time." The tension in the room became palpable. Jason looked up from his snowboarding gear, and even Lily paused her digital entertainment. Something significant was about to be revealed. Grandma Helen began to speak, her voice carrying the weight of family history. "Your great-grandmother Margaret was not just an ordinary woman. She was a war correspondent during World War II, one of the first female journalists to report from the front lines." I could see my father's discomfort growing. My mother's hands were now perfectly still, her attention completely focused on Grandma Helen. "This journal," she continued, pointing to the leather-bound book in my hands, "contains stories that our family has kept hidden for generations. Stories that connect directly to you, Emily." My heart raced. The room seemed to shrink, the Christmas tree's twinkling lights becoming distant. Whatever was about to be revealed would change everything I thought I knew about my family. Grandma Helen leaned forward, her voice dropping to an almost conspiratorial whisper. "Some secrets are meant to be discovered by the right person, at the right time." The journal in my hands suddenly felt like more than just an old book. It was a key to a mystery, a gateway to understanding the complicated tapestry of my family's history. My father cleared his throat, a clear signal of his growing unease. "Helen, perhaps this isn't the appropriate time." But Grandma Helen's smile was knowing, filled with a mix of mischief and determination. She had waited decades for this moment, and nothing would stop her now. The journal's leather cover seemed to pulse with anticipation, holding stories that had been waiting to be told. And I was about to become the vessel for those long-buried secrets. What hidden truths were waiting to be uncovered? And why did my parents look so anxious about a simple family heirloom? The weight of generations pressed against my fingertips, promising revelations that would challenge everything I thought I knew about my family. The Miller household silence harbored layers of history, far beyond what anyone could imagine. My family had always been a complex enigma, seemingly normal on the surface, but with underground currents of secrets flowing like invisible rivers. The Millers were not an ordinary family. We were more like an intricate organization, each member playing a role that transcended traditional family relationships. My father, Robert Miller, a marketing executive who seemed as common as any suburban American dad, carried with him a history of strategic precision that went far beyond advertising business. Sarah Miller, my mother, a high school teacher, had a gaze that sometimes made me feel like she could read thoughts. Her history lessons were not just academic lectures, but true geopolitical analysis sessions disguised as traditional education. Jason, my older brother, always seemed more interested in his sports equipment and social life, but I was beginning to notice subtle moments where his attention sharpened, where a seemingly casual comment revealed an intelligence far beyond a typical teenager's. Lily, my younger sister, with her 12 years and total digital absorption, represented the modern generation. But even in her, there was something different, an information processing capacity that went beyond what one would normally expect from someone her age. The Miller house was like a living organism, each member a specialized cell in a larger function. We were not just a family, we were a system. The portraits on the walls told silent stories, photographs of previous generations, men and women with penetrating gazes, poses that suggested much more than simple family records. They were snapshots of people who clearly carried secrets. I remembered fragmented conversations over the years, seemingly random comments from teachers, meaningful glances exchanged between my parents during international news broadcasts. Small details that, alone, seemed insignificant, but together formed an intriguing mosaic. The house breathed history. The walls seemed to hold conversations that were never fully spoken. The furniture, the books, each object seemed to carry a hidden narrative. On that Christmas night, something was about to change. The Miller universe was about to reveal layers that had remained hidden for generations. Grandma Helen was not just a family matriarch. She was the guardian of a lineage, the bridge between past and present. Her eyes carried the wisdom of untold stories, of secret missions, of a family legacy that went far beyond what any official document could record. The small package in her hands was not just a gift. It was a key to unraveling decades of family secrets. My heart was beating fast. Something extraordinary was about to happen. The Christmas tree lights flickered, casting shadows that seemed to dance with anticipation. The perfectly decorated room suddenly felt like a stage, ready for a performance that would change everything. Outside, the winter night pressed against the windows, a silent witness to the secrets about to be revealed. The Miller family's complexity extended far beyond our immediate perception. Each member was a carefully crafted piece of an intricate puzzle, with skills and backgrounds that suggested something more profound than a typical suburban American family. My father, Robert Miller, had a professional background that seemed deliberately ambiguous. His marketing executive title was more of a carefully constructed cover than a genuine career. I'd noticed over the years how his international connections seemed unusually extensive. Business trips were never just business trips. They carried an undercurrent of strategic importance that went unspoken. Sarah Miller's teaching career was equally nuanced. Her approach to education transcended traditional methodology. History classes weren't just about memorizing dates and events. They were sophisticated exercises in critical thinking and global pattern recognition. Students who paid close attention would find themselves solving complex geopolitical scenarios disguised as classroom assignments. Jason, my older brother, represented a different kind of preparation. His obsession with extreme sports, snowboarding, rock climbing, tactical training, seemed random. But now, I recognized these as carefully selected skill-building exercises. Physical resilience, risk assessment, adaptability. These weren't just hobbies, they were training modules. Lily, despite her young age, showed signs of extraordinary cognitive processing. Her seemingly mindless digital consumption was actually a sophisticated method of information gathering. She could navigate complex online environments with an intuition that suggested something more than typical generational tech savviness. Grandma Helen was the family's true historian and strategist. Her connections seemed to span generations and continents. During family gatherings, casual conversations would suddenly reveal depth, a passing comment about a historical event, a subtle reference to geopolitical shifts that most would overlook. The Miller family home was more than a residence. It was a carefully designed operational space. Bookshelves contained volumes that went beyond typical family reading. Advanced texts on cryptography, strategic communication, international relations. What appeared decorative often concealed sophisticated communication devices. Our family dinners were never just meals. They were strategic debriefings disguised as casual conversations. A discussion about a local news event could quickly transform into a complex analysis of global communication patterns. Subtle eye contact, coded language. Everything carried multiple layers of meaning. The photographs throughout the house told stories beyond simple family memories. A picture of Margaret during World War II wasn't just a historical snapshot. It was a testament to a legacy of strategic intervention. Each image seemed to whisper secrets, holding memories of missions that would never be fully disclosed. Our genetic lineage wasn't just about blood relations. It was about a carefully cultivated set of capabilities passed down through generations. Problem solving, pattern recognition, strategic thinking, these were our inherited traits, more valuable than any traditional family wealth. The journal from Margaret became increasingly significant. It wasn't just a historical document. It was a training manual, a roadmap to understanding our family's true purpose. Each page revealed not just her experiences, but the philosophical approach to global communication and strategic intervention. As I held the journal, I realized our family was more than a unit. We were a specialized network, each member trained and positioned to understand and potentially influence global narratives in ways most could never comprehend. The Christmas tree in the corner suddenly felt like more than a holiday decoration. It was a symbol of hidden connections, of secrets waiting to be unveiled, of a legacy that was about to be passed down. Something extraordinary was coming, and the Miller family was prepared. As I opened the first page of the journal, a yellowed photograph slipped out, landing face up on the living room carpet. The image captured a young woman in military correspondence attire, standing beside a ruined building with a determined expression that seemed eerily familiar. "Who is she?" I asked, picking up the photograph. Grandma Helen's fingers traced the edge of the image. "Margaret Elizabeth Miller, your great-grandmother, a woman who changed the course of our family's history in ways you can't imagine." My father's body tensed. "Helen, stop," he warned, his voice low and controlled. But Grandma Helen was beyond stopping. "Robert, she deserves to know the truth. After all these years of silence, Emily needs to understand." The conflict brewing in the room was more palpable than the Christmas decorations, more real than the presents scattered around. Something significant had been hidden, and now it was threatening to burst through the carefully maintained family facade. I began reading the first entry, dated June 15, 1944. Today, I witnessed humanity's darkest and brightest moments. War is not just about battles fought with weapons, but battles fought within the human heart. The journal's pages were filled with detailed accounts of Margaret's experiences as a war correspondent. Detailed descriptions of battlefields, interviews with soldiers, and personal reflections that painted a vivid picture of a world in chaos. But between the lines, I sensed something more, a hidden narrative that my family had carefully concealed. "Your great-grandmother wasn't just a journalist," Grandma Helen explained. "She was a critical intelligence operative during World War II. Her reports didn't just document the war, they influenced military strategies." My mother's hand suddenly gripped the armrest of her chair. Jason and Lily, typically absorbed in their own worlds, were now watching with undivided attention. "What kind of strategies?" I asked. Before Grandma Helen could answer, my father stood up. "This is not a conversation for Christmas morning." But the dam had broken. Grandma Helen continued, her voice steady and clear. "Margaret worked with a special intelligence unit, gathering critical information about German military movements. Her work saved hundreds, perhaps thousands of lives." The photograph in my hand seemed to vibrate with untold stories. Margaret's eyes stared back at me, determined, intelligent, holding secrets. "There's more," Grandma Helen said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Something that directly connects to you, Emily." My father's face had gone pale. My mother looked like she might be sick. "What do you mean?" I asked. Grandma Helen's hand covered mine. "The reason your parents have been distant, the reason you've always felt different in this family, it's all connected to Margaret's legacy." The journal felt heavy, not just with paper and ink, but with decades of unspoken truths. Each page seemed to pulse with a narrative waiting to be unleashed. My father finally spoke, his voice a mix of resignation and fear. "Helen, you promised you would never—" "Promised what?" I interrupted, my heart racing. The room held its breath. Christmas lights flickered. The perfect family portrait was about to shatter. Grandma Helen looked directly into my eyes, a lifetime of secrets dancing in her gaze. "Some inheritances," she said slowly, "are not about money or possessions. Some inheritances are about purpose, about destiny." The photograph of Margaret seemed to wink, as if sharing a secret only I could understand. What hidden truth was about to be revealed? And how would it change everything I knew about my family, my identity, my very existence? The encrypted message that arrived was more than a simple communication. It was a catalyst that would transform everything we understood about our family's purpose. Global communication infrastructures were under unprecedented threat. Not from traditional military actions, but from a more insidious form of warfare. Digital manipulation designed to destabilize international economic systems. The vulnerability isn't just technological, my father explained, spreading digital maps across our secure family communication center. It's psychological. Modern warfare is about controlling narratives, not just territories. Margaret's journal became more than a historical document. It was a strategic playbook that outlined methods of information intervention that seemed decades ahead of their time. Her notes revealed a profound understanding of communication as a weapon more powerful than any traditional military arsenal. The threat we were facing targeted multiple global communication hubs simultaneously: financial systems in Singapore, communication networks in Eastern Europe, technological infrastructures across North America. All were potential points of manipulation. "This isn't just about preventing an attack," Grandma Helen explained. "It's about understanding the complex web of global communication and identifying the human elements behind these technological threats." My mother's background in education suddenly made perfect sense. Teaching wasn't just her profession. It was a sophisticated method of training pattern recognition and strategic thinking. Every lesson, every discussion was a carefully designed exercise in critical analysis. Jason's extreme sports training revealed its true purpose: physical resilience, quick decision-making under pressure, adaptability. These were not just athletic skills, but critical components of strategic intervention. Lily's digital fluency wasn't mere generational tech savviness. She was a natural data analyst, capable of processing complex information streams with an intuition that went beyond typical technological understanding. The Miller family wasn't just a family. We were a specialized unit, each member carefully prepared for a specific role in a much larger operational framework. The genetic potential in our lineage, my father explained, isn't about individual brilliance. It's about collective strategic capability. Margaret's wartime experiences had established a template. During World War II, she hadn't just reported information. She had actively shaped intelligence strategies that prevented potential global conflicts. Now, decades later, her legacy was being continued through us. The communication hub we were monitoring showed increasingly complex manipulation attempts. Traditional cybersecurity measures would fail. This required a more nuanced, human-centered approach to digital defense. "We're not just protecting systems," Grandma Helen emphasized. "We're protecting the human narratives that those systems support." The encrypted messages became more frequent, each one a complex puzzle that required immediate, precise intervention. Our family transformed into a living, breathing, strategic communication center. Jason's tactical training, my analytical skills, Lily's data processing capabilities. We were becoming more than individual family members. We were a unified strategic unit. The Christmas tree in the corner seemed to watch silently, a witness to the extraordinary transformation happening in our ordinary-looking living room. Something significant was coming, and the Miller family was ready. The house fell into an uncomfortable silence. My brother Jason, typically self-absorbed, looked genuinely intrigued. Lily had abandoned her tablet, her young eyes darting between Grandma Helen and my increasingly anxious parents. "Jason, take Lily to the kitchen," my mother suddenly commanded, her voice unusually sharp. Jason, sensing the tension, didn't argue. As they left, I noticed my mother's hands were shaking, almost imperceptibly, but trembling nonetheless. The journal in my hands felt alive, breathing with untold stories. I flipped through more pages, discovering Margaret's meticulous notes. Detailed sketches of military installations, coded messages, cryptic annotations that suggested a complexity far beyond simple war reporting. Your great-grandmother was more than a journalist, Grandma Helen continued. She was a critical link in the Allied intelligence network. My father, who had been silent, suddenly spoke. Helen, you promised. We agreed this would never be discussed. Agreed? I interrupted. What exactly did you agree about? Grandma Helen's eyes softened. She pulled another photograph from between the journal's pages. This one showing Margaret standing with a group of men in military uniforms. Her stance confident, her expression resolute. Margaret wasn't just documenting the war. She was actively changing its course, she explained. Her intelligence work was so sensitive that even decades later, some information remains classified. A subtle subplot was emerging. This wasn't just a family story. This was a narrative of courage, sacrifice, and secrets that transcended generations. My father's professional demeanor was cracking. Years of carefully constructed silence were unraveling with each word Grandma Helen spoke. Do you know why your parents have always been distant? Grandma Helen asked, her voice low. Before I could respond, she continued. Protection. They've been protecting you from a legacy that could be both a blessing and a burden. The journal entry from July 23, 1944, caught my eye. Some missions are not about winning battles, but preserving humanity's potential. What we do in the shadows determines the light that follows. Cryptic, powerful, suggesting something far more significant than a simple war story. Your mother, Grandma Helen nodded toward Sarah, comes from a long line of intelligence operatives. Your father was recruited precisely because of his strategic mind and ability to maintain absolute secrecy. My mother, usually composed, looked like she might cry. My father's face had turned ashen. What are you talking about? I asked, my voice a mixture of confusion and growing excitement. Grandma Helen's hand covered mine. Some inheritances are genetic. Some are about potential. And yours, Emily, is extraordinary. The room seemed to vibrate with unspoken revelations. The Christmas tree's lights flickered, casting shadows that felt like silent witnesses to a family secret about to be unveiled. What potential? I whispered. Grandma Helen's eyes locked with mine, a lifetime of secrets dancing in her gaze. The potential to change everything. A single moment stretched between revelation and mystery, promising that nothing would ever be the same again. The Miller family legacy extended far beyond our immediate understanding. Each generation carried not just genetic potential, but a complex network of global connections that traced back to Margaret's original intelligence work. I discovered hidden documents revealing intricate family histories. My paternal grandfather had been a diplomatic communications expert during the Cold War. My maternal great-aunt worked in advanced cryptography for the National Security Agency. These weren't coincidences. They were carefully orchestrated strategic placements. Grandma Helen's connections were particularly fascinating. She maintained a network of international contacts that spanned decades. Academics, diplomats, technology experts who seemed to operate in a shadow world of global communication and strategic intervention. Information is the most powerful currency, she would often say, and our family has been its primary traders for generations. The journal revealed complex details about Margaret's wartime operations. She wasn't just a journalist or an intelligence operative. She was a sophisticated communication strategist who understood how narratives could be more powerful than military actions. One particularly revealing entry described a mission where she prevented a potential diplomatic incident by understanding the psychological motivations of key international players. It wasn't about gathering intelligence. It was about understanding human behavior at its most fundamental level. Jason's extreme sports background took on new meaning. His network of international athletes and adventure professionals provided unique communication channels. What seemed like casual friendships were actually carefully maintained strategic connections. Lily's digital fluency went beyond typical teenage technology use. She was developing advanced algorithmic understanding, capable of identifying communication patterns that most sophisticated AI systems would miss. My parents' professional lives were elaborate covers. My father's marketing executive position allowed global travel and communication under seemingly innocent circumstances. My mother's teaching career provided continuous access to emerging generational communication patterns. The family's communication methods were themselves a complex encryption system. Casual conversations contained multiple layers of meaning. A discussion about a local news event could simultaneously be a strategic briefing, a skill assessment, and a method of maintaining our operational readiness. Our genetic lineage wasn't just about inherited intelligence. It was about a carefully cultivated ability to understand and manipulate global communication streams. Every generation adapts, Grandma Helen explained. Your great-grandmother used typewriters and telegraphs. Your generation uses digital networks and artificial intelligence. The method changes, but the fundamental strategy remains the same. The Miller family home was more than a residence. It was a sophisticated communication hub with hidden technology integrated seamlessly into everyday objects. Bookshelves contained encrypted communication devices. Seemingly ordinary household items could transform into advanced strategic tools. Our family dinners were intricate strategic sessions. A discussion about a school project could simultaneously be an exercise in strategic thinking, a skill assessment, and a method of maintaining our operational cohesion. The photographs throughout the house told complex stories. A picture of Margaret wasn't just a historical snapshot. It was a coded message, a reminder of our family's true purpose. The Christmas tree in the corner seemed to watch silently, a witness to generations of strategic preparation, of secrets waiting to be revealed. We were more than a family. We were a living, breathing strategic communication network, and something extraordinary was about to happen. The moment hung suspended, fragile as a crystal ornament about to shatter. My father's controlled facade began to crack, revealing glimpses of something deeper: fear, pride, and an overwhelming sense of protection. Perhaps, he said slowly, it's time Emily understood. My mother's hand reached out, gripping his arm. A silent communication passed between them, years of shared secrets condensing into a single touch. Grandma Helen pulled a sealed envelope from beneath the journal. The paper was aged, its edges delicate, bearing an official government watermark that looked decades old. This document, she explained, was classified until 5 years ago. It details Margaret's most critical mission, a mission that ultimately changed the course of the European theater during World War II. The envelope's seal broke with a soft crackling sound. Inside was a detailed military document, partially redacted, with Margaret's name prominently displayed. As I read, the world around me began to shift. Margaret wasn't just a war correspondent. She was a critical intelligence operative who had intercepted and redirected crucial Nazi communication codes. Her work had potentially saved thousands of Allied lives. But there's more, Grandma Helen whispered. The skill set Margaret possessed, her ability to decode complex patterns, her intuitive understanding of strategic communication, it's genetic. My father's professional composure finally broke. Helen, stop, he pleaded. But there was something different in his voice. Not just anger, but a profound sense of vulnerability. Your test scores, my mother suddenly interjected. Your unique problem-solving abilities. The way you can see connections others miss. Fragments of my life suddenly realigned. The way I could always predict my debate team's strategy. How I could look at complex mathematical problems and see solutions others missed. The subtle ways my parents had both encouraged and subtly controlled my educational path. You've been preparing me for something, I realized aloud. The room went silent. Grandma Helen nodded. Not just preparing, protecting. A digital notification broke the tension. My phone buzzed with an encrypted message. Strange, as no one typically had this contact method. The message was a series of numbers and letters, but to my surprise, I understood it instantly. Not just recognized, comprehended its complex, multi-layered meaning. My father's eyes widened. Helen, he said, you weren't supposed to do this today. Do what? I asked. Activate your potential, Grandma Helen responded. The journal seemed to pulse with energy. The photograph of Margaret looked different now, no longer just a historical image, but a mirror reflecting something within me. There are organizations, my grandmother continued, that have been watching your development. Specific government and private intelligence networks that understand rare genetic potential. My mother's professional demeanor returned. Emily, what you just decoded wasn't a random message. It was a test. A test I didn't remember taking. A test I didn't know I was prepared for. Your great-grandmother's legacy isn't just about historical documentation, Grandma Helen explained. It's about a rare genetic predisposition for strategic intelligence, pattern recognition, complex problem-solving, the ability to see connections others cannot. The Christmas tree's lights seemed to refract differently. The room's familiar landscape transformed into something more, a landscape of potential, of hidden capabilities. We've been protecting you, my father said, his voice soft, waiting for the right moment. Protecting me from what? I asked. Grandma Helen's smile was both proud and slightly mysterious. From those who would want to use your potential, and from those who might see it as a threat. The sealed envelope felt heavy in my hands. The journal's pages seemed to whisper with decades of untold stories, and I suddenly understood that this Christmas was not just a family gathering. It was an initiation, a turning point that would change everything. What secrets would be unleashed? What potential lay dormant, waiting to be awakened? The silence was electric, charged with unspoken revelations. My phone buzzed again. Another encrypted message. This time I didn't just decode it. I understood its strategic implications instantly. "She's processing faster than we anticipated," my father muttered, exchanging a look with my mother that was part pride, part concern. Jason and Lily, who had been eavesdropping from the kitchen doorway, slowly crept back into the living room. Their typical sibling rivalry dissolved, replaced by a strange mixture of awe and confusion. "What does this mean for me?" I asked, my voice steady despite the hurricane of emotions swirling inside. Grandma Helen leaned forward. "It means you have a choice, a path that your great-grandmother once walked." My mother's professional demeanor cracked slightly. "It's not a simple career. It's a calling, a responsibility that comes with significant risks." The journal in my hands felt like a living connection to Margaret. Her handwritten notes seemed to pulse with an energy that transcended time. A passage caught my eye. "True intelligence is not about knowing everything. It's about understanding the space between what is said and what remains unspoken." My father's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, his face immediately becoming a mask of professional calm. "Excuse me," he said, stepping into the hallway. "That's not a normal work call," I stated. "It wasn't a question." Grandma Helen smiled. "Nothing about our family is normal, Emily." Lily, typically absorbed in her digital world, spoke up. "Are we like some kind of spy family?" The room tensed. My mother's laugh was sharp, controlled. "Not exactly, sweetheart." Jason, usually detached, looked genuinely intrigued. "So Emily's some kind of, what? Secret genius?" "Potential," my grandmother corrected. "Potential that requires careful cultivation." My father returned, his phone call seemingly changing the atmosphere. "We need to discuss next steps," he said, his tone professional but underlying with an emotion I couldn't quite identify. The Christmas tree lights flickered, casting shadows that seemed to dance with unspoken secrets. The perfect family scene had transformed into something far more complex. "What happens now?" I asked. Grandma Helen's eyes twinkled. "Now, my dear, your real education begins." My mother pulled out a folder, official-looking, sealed with multiple security stamps. "There are assessments, evaluations, potential pathways." The message was clear. This wasn't just a Christmas revelation. This was a recruitment. My life, which had seemed ordinary just hours ago, was now a landscape of extraordinary potential. The family dynamics, the subtle tensions, the careful monitoring, everything suddenly made sense. "I have a choice," I stated, looking directly at my grandmother. "Always," she confirmed. "But some destinies choose you as much as you choose them." Outside, snow began to fall. The perfect white blanket seemed to symbolize a new beginning, a clean slate waiting to be written. My phone buzzed again. Another message. This time, I didn't just decode it. I understood its global implications. The days following Christmas became a blur of controlled chaos. What began as a family holiday transformed into an intensive, almost covert training period. My parents, typically reserved, now approached me with a mix of academic rigor and strategic precision. Mornings started with complex problem-solving exercises, mathematical scenarios that weren't just equations but intricate puzzles designed to test cognitive flexibility. Afternoons involved language decryption, not just translation, but understanding the subtle psychological nuances embedded in communication. "Your brain processes information differently," my father explained during one session. "It's not about intelligence as much as pattern recognition and contextual comprehension." Grandma Helen became my primary mentor. Her stories about Margaret weren't just historical accounts, but carefully crafted lessons in strategic thinking. "Intelligence isn't about knowing everything," she would say. "It's about understanding the connections others miss." Each day revealed another layer of my potential. A casual conversation could suddenly become a complex analytical exercise. My brother Jason watched with a mixture of confusion and grudging respect. Lily, typically self-absorbed, now looked at me with a newfound curiosity. The journal became my most treasured possession. Margaret's meticulous notes were more than historical documentation. They were a roadmap to understanding my emerging capabilities. An entry from July 1944 particularly resonated. "Survival is not about strength, it's about adaptability." about seeing the entire chessboard when others see only individual pieces. My mother, a high school teacher by profession, revealed herself as something far more complex. Her teaching methods transformed into subtle training techniques. Math problems became coded messages. Literature analyses turned into psychological profiling exercises. "We've been preparing you your entire life," she admitted one evening. "Every educational choice, every extracurricular activity. It was all part of a carefully designed developmental strategy." The most surprising revelation came during a seemingly ordinary family dinner. A casual discussion about global politics suddenly became a sophisticated analysis that left my parents exchanging knowing glances. "She's integrating information faster than our projections," my father whispered to my mother. But growth wasn't just intellectual. I began to understand the emotional complexity of my family's history. The distance I'd felt wasn't rejection, it was protection. Every seemingly cold interaction was a carefully constructed shield. Grandma Helen introduced me to a network of professionals, not traditional mentors, but individuals who operated in specialized intelligence and strategic communication fields. Each meeting peeled back another layer of my potential. "Your genetic lineage is rare," one consultant explained. "Less than 0.02% of the population demonstrates this level of cognitive adaptability." The Christmas journal became my most treasured possession. Each page was a testament to Margaret's extraordinary life, a blueprint for my emerging identity. My world expanded beyond traditional boundaries. I wasn't just a high school student anymore. I was becoming something more, a potential bridge between traditional intelligence gathering and modern strategic communication. "You have a choice," my father reminded me repeatedly. "This path is not mandatory, but it is extraordinary." The choice felt both terrifying and exhilarating. Each day revealed another layer of my potential. Mathematical problems became intuitive. Language patterns transformed from complex puzzles to transparent communication channels. Lily and Jason watched my transformation with a mixture of confusion and grudging respect. Our family dynamics shifted, no longer just siblings, but potential collaborators in a complex, unfolding narrative. "Not everyone is meant for extraordinary paths," Grandma Helen would say, "but some are chosen by their potential." My potential was awakening, slowly, deliberately, irrevocably. The snow outside seemed to symbolize my transformation. Pure, clean, holding infinite possibilities. What would I become? The question hung in the air, waiting to be answered. The encrypted message arrived on a Tuesday morning, precisely at 7:13 a.m. Its complexity was unlike anything I'd seen before. A multi-layered communication that most would dismiss as random noise. But I understood. My father's phone rang simultaneously. A coincidence that felt anything but random. "It's time," he said, his professional demeanor sliding into place like a perfectly calibrated mechanism. The preparation had been years in the making. Subtle training disguised as family interactions, educational experiences carefully curated to develop specific cognitive abilities. Now, something was shifting. Grandma Helen arrived unannounced, a weathered briefcase in hand. The same briefcase, I realized, that had accompanied Margaret during her wartime missions. "The genetic potential," she explained, "is not just about intelligence, it's about adaptability, about seeing connections others cannot." My mother began removing specific items from a hidden safe, documents, secure communication devices that looked nothing like typical technology. Each item was handled with a reverence that suggested they were more than just objects. "Your great-grandmother's work wasn't just about gathering information," my father said. "It was about understanding the human element behind global strategies." The journal seemed to pulse with energy. Margaret's notes, once cryptic, now read like a roadmap to my emerging capabilities. An unexpected development emerged. The encrypted message suggested more than just a potential mission. It was a test, a final assessment of everything I'd been prepared for. Jason and Lily were sent to stay with relatives, a move that felt both protective and strategic. Our family's usual dynamics were transforming into something far more complex. "You have trained for this your entire life," Grandma Helen said, her voice a mix of pride and caution. "But training and execution are two different landscapes." My phone buzzed again. Another message. This time, I recognized the communication protocol instantly, a sophisticated system that went beyond traditional encryption. "The window is narrow," my mother said, checking a secure communication device. "Approximately 72 hours to respond and integrate." The living room transformed. Secure communication devices appeared. Maps were carefully unfolded. a strategic planning session that looked more like a military operation than a family meeting. My father's eyes held a mixture of emotions: pride, fear, determination. "Some inheritances," he quoted from Margaret's journal, "are not about possessions, they're about purpose." The preparation wasn't just about me, it was about continuing a legacy that had shaped global communications for generations. Outside, a winter storm began to build. The gathering darkness seemed to mirror the complexity of the moment. Something significant was about to happen, something that would change everything. The question was no longer if I was ready, but how ready was the world for what was coming? The operation began at 2:17 a.m. without warning or ceremony. My secured communication device vibrated with a series of coordinates and encrypted data streams. What looked like random numerical sequences to anyone else revealed a complex geopolitical scenario unfolding in real time. "Global communication infrastructure vulnerability," my father explained, his voice clinical. "A potential cyber manipulation that could destabilize multiple international financial systems." The Miller family living room transformed into a high-stakes operational center. Screens flickered with global communication networks, satellite imaging, and real-time data streams. My mother, typically a high school teacher, now moved with the precision of a strategic operations specialist. Grandma Helen positioned herself near a vintage communication device, a relic from Margaret's era that somehow integrated seamlessly with modern technology. "Your great-grandmother didn't just report wars," she said. "She prevented them by understanding the human elements behind conflict." The next few hours became a blur of intense concentration. My brain processed information at speeds that would have seemed impossible weeks ago. Complex algorithms, geopolitical scenarios, potential manipulation patterns, all became as readable as a children's picture book. "Target identified," I announced, my voice steady. "Russian-based communication hub. Secondary manipulation point in Singapore financial sector." My father's eyes widened. Not with surprise, but with a mixture of pride and intense focus. The cyber threat wasn't just about financial disruption. It was a sophisticated attempt to create global economic instability, targeting vulnerable communication infrastructures in at least 7 countries. My hands moved across multiple communication devices, creating counter-encryption protocols that would have taken teams of experts weeks to develop. "Genetic potential confirmed," my mother muttered, monitoring my actions. The attack window was narrow, approximately 43 minutes to prevent a potential global economic disruption that could impact millions. Each keystroke, each decoded message was a strategic move in a complex international chess game. The Miller family legacy wasn't just about intelligence gathering. It was about preventing catastrophic events before they could fully materialize. Grandma Helen's hand touched mine briefly. "Margaret would be proud," she whispered. The communication hub in Singapore began to destabilize. My counter protocols created a sophisticated firewall that not only blocked the potential attack, but also left no trace of the intervention. "Neutralized," I announced at 3:04 a.m. Complete silence followed. My father checked multiple secure communication channels. "Confirmed," he said finally. "Total containment." The living room slowly returned to its normal appearance. Christmas decorations remained, a bizarre contrast to the high-stakes operation that had just occurred. "Why me?" I asked, breaking the silence. Grandma Helen smiled. "Some legacies choose their inheritors. You didn't just inherit a skill set, you inherited a responsibility." My phone buzzed. An encrypted message from an unknown source. "Miller protocol executed, global integrity maintained." The message would disappear in 60 seconds, leaving no trace. Outside, the winter storm began to dissipate. First light started breaking through the darkness, a metaphorical representation of the operation we'd just completed. My life would never be the same. The ordinary teenage existence had been replaced by something extraordinary. A legacy continued, a potential realized, a world subtly protected. The aftermath was deceptively calm. Breakfast proceeded like any other morning. Toast, scrambled eggs, orange juice. But everything had changed. My family exchanged knowing glances. No words were necessary. The operation had been successful, the global threat neutralized with surgical precision. Grandma Helen broke the silence. "Some stories are never told. Some heroes remain invisible." My phone showed no trace of last night's events. No evidence existed of the critical intervention we'd executed. Such was the nature of our family's work, to protect without recognition. "What happens now?" I asked. My father's response was measured. "Continued training, selective engagement. Your potential is both a gift and a responsibility." The journal from Margaret sat on the coffee table, a silent witness to generations of extraordinary service. Its pages held secrets that would never be fully revealed. Lily and Jason returned, oblivious to the night's events. To them, I was still just their sister, albeit one who seemed slightly different, more focused. Your path is your choice, my mother emphasized. But know that you're part of something larger than yourself. The Christmas tree still stood in the corner, a reminder of the moment everything changed. The small box Grandma Helen had given me now represented more than a simple gift. It was an invitation to a world most would never understand. Outside, the winter morning suggested nothing extraordinary had happened. But we knew differently. Some legacies are inherited in moments of quiet revelation. Some potential is waiting, always, to be awakened. Months later, the world continued spinning, unaware of the invisible guardians who maintained its delicate balance. My life had transformed, no longer just a high school student, but a potential guardian of global communication networks. The journal remained my closest companion, Margaret's words a constant reminder of the extraordinary legacy I now carried. Some inheritances are silent, some protectors remain unseen. For those who sense they might be more than they appear, who feel a calling beyond the ordinary, pay attention. Listen to the whispers of potential. Not all heroism is loud. Not all protection happens on battlefields. Your unique skills, your unexplored capabilities might be the key to something extraordinary. Are you ready to discover your true potential?